Daniel, welcome to Just Curious.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Today, I'd love to explore how you help creative services firms differentiate themselves, strategically adopt AI, and drive measurable results. Maybe we could start with a introduction. Who is Daniel Ostra? You know what? God damn it. Is it Daniel? Welcome to Just Curious.
Stu, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Today, I'd love to explore how you help creative services firms differentiate themselves, how you help them strategically adopt AI and drive measurable results. First, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Who is Daniel Ostrower? What drew you to strategic leadership, professional services, and also AI?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the innovation business in one form or another for most of my 3-decade career. I've been on the client side, running high-tech venture-backed startups. I've been on the professional services side in a variety of different consulting and advising organizations. For a good chunk of the 2000s, I was running, like a 50-person or so product innovation and design services firm. And it was, in many ways, it was what I had been looking for all of my career. I just absolutely loved it. I'd found that sweet spot. And at the same time, it's really, really hard. First of all, the professional services business model is just a huge challenge. And it requires that you be thinking strategically and thinking about the long term and the future all the time. And at the same time, at that scale, it's just so hard to do. You're getting sucked into the day to day, selling the next project, doing the next deliverable, rather than really thinking long term. And so after that firm that I was running called Altitude was acquired by Accenture, and I did my time at Accenture, I came out and I basically started the service that I wish I had while I was running Altitude, which is, somebody to be there as your partner to pull you out of the day to day and get you thinking about the long-term issues, differentiation, business model, et cetera, that you need to be thinking about. And AI is just on that list today. I mean, there's no question that AI is going to have a huge impact on professional services. And so it's got to be on your strategic agenda.
Yeah, you mentioned differentiation. How should leaders clearly define and validate their unique proposition and differentiation relative to peers and competitors?
Yeah, I think it's a really important issue for professional services firms, creative professional services firms, and it's where things often go wrong, right? It's not enough to just say, "Hey, we're in the design business and we serve every client that comes along." You really have to say what makes you different and where you focus. And I think there are a few questions within that. The first is, where are you playing on the price performance spectrum, right? If you're running a professional services firm and you haven't read this article that came out in HBR, I think it was around COVID, like 2019, 2020, called How Professional Services Thrive. You really should read that article, and it talks about this spectrum from commodity to rocket science. And you need to know where you are on that spectrum. And then after that, it's a combination of what you offer, who you serve, and how you do the work. So what you offer is, are you in product innovation? Are you in customer research? Are you in marketing strategy? Like, what is that offering that you have? Who you serve is really which industries and what types of companies. A huge mistake is to sort of say, we serve everyone. You can't. Right. And then finally, how do you do that? Right. How do you match up the what with who? And that is, you've got some sort of specific IP, some sort of specific approach or way of you doing your work that makes you special that nobody else does. And all those three things connect together to create a differentiated offering. Like, you really need to go through that thinking. And if you haven't done that, you're not positioned yet to think about AI, right? You really need to be able to say what firms are not going to want to work with me. And if you can't do that, you've got a real challenge. And that's where a huge number of professional services go wrong right off the bat.
Yeah, we're going to walk through an example of like how that playbook can be deployed. Maybe we can start with AI, which you just mentioned. Why should creative professional services firms care about AI?
Well, AI is going to affect professional services firms in one way, form, or another. So if you think about it, professional services firms are selling human capacity to do work, and AI replaces human capacity to do work, right? So, like, that can be disruptive or it can be enhancing, right? But it's almost certainly going to have some impact. So you need to be thinking about that. And, I think there's a couple of ways to do that. One is to ask the question, how can AI cement my position? So I'm working with certain clients doing certain things at a certain price performance tier. How can AI help me cement my position? Right? You could also ask the question, how can AI help me extend my position to serve clients that I'm not serving today, right? It can help you expand your market. And so you need to be thinking about those questions. You need to be thinking about those questions because it's not going to go away.
Yeah. For people listening, would it be possible to share an example of cementing a position and extending a position when it comes to
Yeah, I mean, so let's say you're in the product innovation space, right? You can, and you have your ideas to be human centered, to gather thinking from your customer and to drive that through your clients and to drive that through your design process, right? AI can help make that process more efficient. It can help make that process more rigorous so that you might discover insights from the customer interviews that you've done and how to translate that into designs in ways that you wouldn't have done without AI, right? And so that's helping do what you do already for your clients even better. Or you can say, hey, I can take some of what I do and turn it into something that's fast and easy for my clients to do without me. Or other, really it's other clients to do without you, clients that couldn't afford your services. And so that's an example of extending your services to new markets.
Right. And you mentioned, and we spoke to differentiation earlier, firms often have like unique IP in addition to methods. What's the right approach to embed AI into existing IP or one of those unique methods?
Right. I mean, I think where you have to start is if you want your unique process, your unique approach to marry up with AI in a way that's differentiated in the market, you need to make sure that first of all your differentiation is documented, is repeatable, that you've got lots of examples and data behind it, because that's the stuff that you have to use to teach the AI, right? You're essentially going to be taking some model that exists, right? You're not going to be building your own LLM or anything like that. You're going to be taking some model that exists and you're going to be teaching it your process, right? And what makes you special. And if you can't feed it essentially that data bank, that data set, then the AI is not going to be able to learn, and the AI is not going to be able to be essentially being able to act on your behalf. So your case studies, your standard operating procedures that you have for your teams as they're doing work, your description of industries and how your process works in those industries. If you don't have all that stuff, then you've got a challenge. So it's really about getting that stuff, coding that stuff, and then starting to feed it into models so that AIs can learn from what you've done. And then I think test driving those models, right? To see if it's outputting what essentially you would do, right?
Yeah. And let's say you do that. How do we know we're successful? What does successful execution look like? And how should firms measure the strategic impact from their AI initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that different than any other thing that you're doing that's some kind of an innovation program, right? So, first of all, when it comes down to successful execution, the biggest challenge is going to be allocating resources to this, right? So, again, let's stand in the shoes of that person running a professional services firm. What's going to be top of mind always is, do I have a pipeline? Are my resources allocated? right? And am I making a profit from allocating those resources? That's what's top of mind all the time. And so to do this work, you've got to pull resources out of that equation and put them onto this work. So successful execution, first of all, is a lot about how you do that and how you make those resources available. If there's any way you can build it into a client program, right? Like be bold and like actually pitch this to clients and find ways to deliver it, right? Even if the client isn't going to pay as much for it as they might pay for your core services, and you've got a conversation with that client about, hey, I'm actually trying to do some new things here. Are you interested in, can we do it on your program? If it's built into that client program, everybody's been in a professional services firm knows you're much more likely to get the work done than it's not built into the client program. If you don't have it built into the client program, you really need to bound the thing. You need to say, hey, look, here's how much money I'm going to spend on this in terms of actually cash outlay, as well as allocation of hours of team members. And here's how long we're going to spend on it. Here are the milestones I'm after, right? You've got to bound it and you've got to measure it, manage it really rigorously. Otherwise, what's going to happen, you're going to pull those resources and you're going to put them on a revenue generating program right off the bat. So that's critical. And then the other piece of it is to say, what am I trying to get out of this, right? What are the outcomes that I'm hoping for? What did you want to learn by doing it? And then just say, did those things happen the same way you do any other kind of experiment or innovation program? So if you've incorporated AI to make your existing process more efficient, did you do that process faster? Did you reap a higher profit margin? Did you free up utilization of resources to work on something else? So if you incorporated AI into your process to provide higher client value, did you get that sale, right? Did the client love the result? Was the price higher, right? Like these are measurable things, and it's all about just saying what those things are at the beginning and then looking as you're going on to whether you're doing it. So honestly, I'm not sure that that's any different than any kind of strategic or innovation initiative that you might undertake.
Yeah, I would love to walk through an example of that approach. You had shared with me some work that you'd done for a marketing firm. They had a unique piece of IP. Tell us a little bit about that engagement. Who was the client? What problem did they come to you with? And then we can walk through the story of how you helped.
Yeah. So I have to keep the client anonymous. I'm under NDA, but this is a marketing services firm. They're a strategic marketing services firm, so they work with their clients to develop marketing strategy, and then they execute that marketing strategy by creating content and campaigns to actually go to market. So that's sort of the business that they are in. They're special because they only do that for clients whose customers have really, really complex, emotional, multifaceted, long buying cycles. So that's their kind of unique positioning in the marketplace. So think about things like healthcare, right? Their clients would be in the healthcare space. Those healthcare clients, their patients, they just got diagnosed with something. What are they going to do? What treatments are they going to choose? What hospital are they going to go to? Emotions swirling around, like really, really challenging buying cycles, right? Same thing for like really complex B2B software or B2B equipment or something like that. Lots of people involved, very complicated. So that's the space that they're operating in. And essentially what they've done is they've developed some really unique IP. They have a neuropsychological model that's grounded in like real research on neurology and psychology. So this neuropsych model for how people make decisions and navigate these really complicated situations. And they use that model, right, to underpin all the work they do, the strategies that they deliver, and then the content that they create. Like if they create a video, it's going to be hinged on that model. So that's that's kind of who they are. And so they've got like sort of step one down, right? They're very focused. They know where they're pointed. And they're differentiated. They're not just saying, hey, we're a marketing services firm, right? So that's kind of step one. And when it comes to AI, they wanted to prioritize, what they should be doing. They looked at AI like, it's all this stuff happening. What should we focus on, right? So that's kind of where we started.
Yeah. So tell us then where you went from there. How did you go about helping them make sense of this changing world and like it's leveraging their unique IP to create value in combination with AI.
Right. And so I think that the next thing when it comes to AI is like, so first of all, be differentiated. If you're not differentiated, you need to start with that. The second is have a point of view about where you want to go with this, right? Like, I do think that there's a certain amount of, we can't predict what's going to happen with AI. There's a ton of different futures. You can think through those, but have a point of view about what you want to happen for yourself. So in this particular case, the client was really interested in a future where AI would help them look a little bit more like a software or a product company with repeatable revenue streams, right? More passive revenue streams than a professional services firm. So that's the kind of the light on the hill that they wanted to aim for. And we sort of said, okay, so if we're going to get there, let's look at doing a few things. Let's start by how could we make what we do today a little bit more efficient? Then let's think about steps we can take with AI that differentiate our service offering for our clients. Then let's think about how we can spin some of that out into products that we can offer our clients that are differentiated and that broaden our market. And finally, could we be in a place where actually we're spinning out an entirely different company to do that? So we kind of like at least had a roadmap in mind. And that's not to say that that's ironclad, because again, it's really, really hard to predict, but they kind of knew where they wanted to go. And then the third step, start doing stuff. Like, you've got to start experimenting and just building things and putting them out there, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples. We talked about like, how can we make what we do already more efficient? So a big part of what this client does, part of their strategic service, is they'll create personas for their clients, customers' personas for their clients. And these personas are something that probably a lot of us are familiar with. They have their own unique brand of personas. It's hinged in that neuropsychological model. So there are all these decision points in the psychological model. There are all these criteria in the psychological model. So they build these really, really cool personas around that. And that generally takes a lot of work for their people to do, right? You're doing all these customer interviews, then you're sifting through all the data, you're aligning it to the model, you're pulling out what's important and what's not. And so one of the first things that they do is just like, well, can we teach AI to make one of these personas, right? Right? So they fed it the persona structure, they fed it some examples, and they used it to start outputting personas. And a first step is maybe you do it alongside the normal process. Then maybe you have the AI do it for you, and you go back and look at what it came up with, and you refine it. And then as you do that more and more, the AI can be doing it more and more automated. And so that's just saving teams a lot of time and effort, and it's allowing those teams to focus on issues with the client about like, well, how are we going to use these personas? What's the outcome of it? What's the strategy of it? So it's freeing up resource to be doing other things.
Yeah. And that's an example of the extend approach that we were touching on earlier. What would they end up ultimately doing with that experimentation? Did they create a product for their clients? What did that look like?
Yeah, so that's what's really interesting about this is it sort of started as like, how do we make our work for our clients today more efficient? But it very quickly became like, okay, this is something that we can use to extend our market and extend our reach. So one of the things that they're doing is they're putting this persona making tool on the web, right? As a way for clients to come and sort of say like, well, let me put a few questions in here, a little bit of information, and let me get some really, really quick personas. And it's a way of showing clients how useful that model is, how valuable it can be for them, and introducing new clients to this company that I work with, my client, right? And then the next step beyond that would actually be able to turn it into a product that you can sell and that you can market. And now, instead of personas being something that costs, tens of thousands or $100,000 to offer, it's something that you can sell for $100 a month or something like that. So it changes what market you can address, right?
Yeah. And how are they using that much less expensive version of the persona? Is it something they are selling? Are they offering it, for free? Is it in service of generating leads or marketing? How are they capitalizing on that?
Yeah, step one is for free to generate leads, right? Kind of thing. Like, I don't know if you remember, like when HubSpot first launched years ago, you could put your website in and it would give you a bunch of advice, and you're like, wow, this is really, really good. I should call HubSpot, right? So that's the kind of the first way that they're using this. But I think what they're thinking about down the line is how could this turn into a software product, right?
Yeah, yeah. We talked about your approach and we shared an example. If I'm a creative services leader listening to this conversation, what's an immediate step that they can take to start implementing this playbook?
I mean, an immediate step is, I mean, so first of all, like what I would love to say, I'll say it again, like you got to be differentiated. You got to have that vision of where you want to do this, right? And of course, I love to say that because those are some of the things that I help clients with. But I'll be honest, like even if you haven't done that, just sit down, have an hour-long meeting, and at the end of the meeting say, we're going to pick something to do with AI, right? We're going to pick something. We're going to launch some free lead generation tool like I just talked about. Or we're just going to use it internally to make something more efficient. Even if it's not on the client side, use AI to make your invoicing more efficient. I don't care. Try something, right? It's got to go from AI is really scary and daunting, and there's a bazillion different confusing options to I've done something, I can get my arms around this, I can get some results from it, I've learned something, right? So I would say like that can be an immediate step for anyone.
Yeah. How did you land on the persona creation? What was that process like to go from in an ocean of opportunities down to selecting one to move forward with?
So for this particular company that I was working with, there were a few criteria there, right? So first off is it's something that is part of their process in so many engagements that they do, right? So it's really, really core. It embodied their differentiation because the way they craft personas is different than how anybody else crafts personas. Their clients find it very, very valuable, right? And it's something that could be taught to AI, right? And finally, it's something that they could see aligned with that roadmap that we talked about going from efficiency to making your work better to expanding your market, right? They could see how maybe this could become a product, right? And so it met a bunch of different criteria. They had somebody who wanted to take it on, and so they did it.
Yeah. You've been involved in innovation for a long time. You've seen a number of cycles, the beginning of, not beginning, but the early days of the internet, cloud, social, I guess Web3, the metaverse, AI. Some had significant impact, some turned out not to. How does AI compare to what you've seen previously?
I it feels both more potentially impactful and faster towards impact
Yeah.
than other things I've seen. I mean, I don't have the statistics at hand about, but just the rate of adoption of like the chatbots is just enormous. And if you see the things that people are using it for, and again, like in my space in professional services, if you project out scenarios of what could happen. Look, there are scenarios where nothing happens. AI does something terrible, countries come together, they ban it, like nothing happens. Like, hey, that's a scenario. But there's also scenarios where professional services firms don't really exist in the way they exist at all today. And then I think there's some scenarios where it's like really encouraging, right? Like, so for instance, in the world of professional services for innovation, like let's talk about corporations trying to do innovation, right? The big problem with corporations doing innovation are the people and the politics and the incentive issues in the organizations. Like we can figure out what you should launch to market, but getting the organization to do it is really, really hard. Well, if AI makes all the work of figuring out what you should do really fast and easy, then professional services firms can focus on the coaching and the advising to get the organization to actually make and adopt change. So that's a scenario where AI is like super exciting in this space and maybe unlocks what we've been trying to do, right? So I see a huge amount of potential. It could be really scary. I think it's happening really, really fast compared to other things. And, it can't be ignored.
Yeah.
Just can't be ignored.
You mentioned the speed and the pace of change. Does that create concern amongst your clients that they might be investing in something today that is less relevant tomorrow? And how do you help people navigate investing in innovation when the pace of change is so significant?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see clients, in here I'm talking about, not necessarily my professional services clients, but the organizations that those companies are serving, like the corporations who are trying to innovate. And I see them making the investment in it because the benefits of AI are really quite apparent, right? The fact that it's happening so fast is a good thing for them. They can see the payback. Like you can make what you do today efficient, right? And if you can do that math, right, it's really easy to justify those investments. It's really easy to see that ROI. And so the professional services firms are seeing their clients doing that. They know that they're going to have to do this too. Like, I don't see, like, in some ways, the ROI is almost clearer than some things that have come in the past. And I see organizations jumping on it.
Yeah. What are the common pitfalls that people fall into when investing in innovation like AI?
Not knowing what you're doing with it, right? I mean, I've talked about how I see AI differently than some of the technologies that have come before it, right? Bigger impact, faster. But in another sense, it's also just a technology. It's also just a tool, right? So if we go back to that old adage, nobody buys a drill, they buy a hole. All these things, AI, the internet, 3.0, cloud, those are the drills, right? Those are tools, right? They're not the point of the innovation, right? What are you trying to do with this thing, right? You have to answer that question if you want to go beyond just starting to play and starting to experiment, right? You have to have some point of view about what you're trying to do with this thing and what it's going to do for your organization and for the people that you serve. And I think that that's pitfall number one. If you haven't thought through those things, what are you trying to do? You're just picking up a drill and running around with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that kind of feels like what a lot of AI adoption looks like, especially in big companies. Like, here's a drill. And everyone's like, okay, well.
It does. It does. I would say, I will counter my own argument, right? I'll take down my own argument, which is that experimentation can help you answer what the hole is, right? So if you run around making a bunch of different sized holes, you can say, oh, that's the one I need, right? So I do think there is some back and forth in that, but you have to be thinking about the AI as a tool for achieving something, right? You have to have that mindset.
Yeah. Is there a shorthand framework to decide whether you are best positioned to cement or extend, for people wondering whether this is an opportunity to launch new products or whether it's really more of an opportunity to improve how they deliver what they do today?
I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to the principal, the person running these professional services organizations, right? Like, there's no right answer for what the future of your company should be. Like, what do you want, right? Do you want to continue running a differentiated professional services organization? Okay, look, there's going to be challenges in the AI world to doing that, but we can chart a path to doing that. Or do you want to stand up and spin out product and software companies? Those are two very, very different things. And, there's no right answer between those two things. What do you want, right? They have different financial implications. They have different lifestyle implications. They have different fulfillment implications for what you're doing with your time and how you like that. So the organizations that I'm consulting to, they tend to be 10 to 100 person companies owned by one or a couple of individuals. What do those individuals want? Right? A lot of it comes down to that.
You mentioned that human capital powered firms are at risk for disruption from AI. I think we're all aware of that. When it comes to professional services, how would you rate sort of the existential threat versus opportunity? Maybe like holistically, but then also are there specific areas within professional services firms where there's more opportunity than there is risk?
Yeah, so I guess I'll sort of start, yeah, holistically, right? I think the threat is fairly significant, but think of it this way, right? At the end of the day, professional services firms exist to help clients take some action, to make a decision and to take some action from that. Okay? And there are always going to be decisions and actions that corporations and other organizations have difficulty making because they can't get out of their own way, or they cannot think outside their own walls, or they need some sort of a push to do it because they are human organizations, right? That is always going to be the case. And there's a certain value in professional services and consulting that isn't about just coming up with the answer of what they should do, but giving them the courage, right? And the conviction to do it. So there's part of the consulting equation that has to come from outside. So now getting a little bit more micro. If you're in the consulting business of basically adding capacity or just coming up with the answer, those are more likely to be disruptive than if you're in the consulting business of helping your clients have courage and conviction, right? If you're more towards the courage and conviction side of things, you have a more sustainable business. But what I would say though, is that the shape of your business is going to change. If you think, we often use the analogy in consulting and professional services of our companies look like pyramids, right? Big thinkers kind of at the top, and then at the bottom, you need a lot of people to kind of do the work. AI is going to take that pyramid and it's going to turn it into a skyscraper, right? You're going to need fewer people to adding capacity and to be coming up with what that answer is. And you're going to need more people talking to the client, helping them think through it, giving them conviction, working alongside the AI. So I would say that's a big opportunity for some organizations, and there are other organizations that are more threat of disruption.
Awesome. Daniel, I really appreciate you coming by, just curious and sharing your perspectives on the intersection of creative services, professional services, and AI, and appreciate all of your thoughts and insights.
I was really happy to do this. Thanks for having me.
Great. Actually, one last question. For people who are listening who wonder whether you are a good fit for them, what types of organizations, what types of professional services firms are you best positioned to help?
Thank you for asking that question. I really appreciate it. I help professional services firms that are usually somewhere in the innovation value system, innovation strategy, research, design, engineering, those sorts of things. And I tend to help those ones. I mentioned this earlier. You're kind of 10 to 100 people in size. So you haven't really scaled. And you're an owner or a leader of one of these firms who is really kind of struggling to give the future the attention it deserves, right? You're getting dragged down into the day to day, and you need a partner to help you get out of that. So that's my space.
Awesome. Daniel, thanks again.
Thank you so much.